So protein quality. Proteins are actually made up of these little building blocks called amino acids. There's 22 amino acids, and 11 of them are called essential amino acids, and 11 of them are called non-essential amino acids. So all essential amino acid means is that the horse must eat them in the diet, as they cannot be made in the body. They must come in from the diet. And there's three amino acids that we talk about the most in horse nutrition. There's lysine, methionine, and threonine. But we're a long way behind production animal nutrition when it comes to knowing much about amino acids. So we know that these are the most limiting ones. We know how much lysine, well, we think we know how much lysine a horse needs. That's it. There's no established requirement for methionine and threonine. We know they need them, but there's not actually a number anywhere or a calculation anywhere that's published to say, well, this is how much we think a growing horse needs, and this is how much we think a lactating mare needs for those amino acids. Now, when we're talking about least cost mixing is the only method of feed and formulation used for poultry and pigs and feedlot cattle. And the reason they can do it and do a very, very good job of it is because they know the requirements for about 10 amino acids in those animal species. And when they formulate based on available amino acids, so the amount of amino acid in all of the ingredients that they know that the animal can access, and anything that might be bound up or not available for absorption, they completely ignore. When horse nutritionists do least cost formulations, they just count the whole lot of lysine, because it's the only amino acid that they look at in their formulation, and it's not taken into account whether it's even available for absorption. It's just, if it's in there, they count it, and that's what you get in your feed. So we're a long way behind in what we understand with amino acids. The other 11 amino acids are non-essential, meaning that the horse can make them when it needs them. So provided it's getting the right building blocks to make them, if it needs one of them, it just makes it. So we pay very little attention to these amino acids. We know they're there, but we don't really bother about looking at how much are in the diet. So when I say a high quality protein, it just means that they contain a lot of essential amino acids in close to the same proportions as the animal needs them. So a high quality protein is going to have a lot of lysine, methionine, and threonine and the other 8 essential amino acids in about the same amounts that an animal actually needs them. Whereas a low quality protein is either going to lack essential amino acids, so they're just not even there in the first place, or it contains them in the wrong proportions. So, if they need more lysine and threonine, but then something like sunflower meal is really high in methionine but really low in lysine, the amino acids are there, but they're all around the wrong way. There's too much methionine, not enough lysine, so it's not a high quality protein. Or the amino acids it contains are unavailable, and this is what happens in cottonseed meal. So in cottonseed, like raw cottonseed, there's a toxic compound called gossypol. If you feed raw cottonseed to your horses, you'll probably kill them because it is quite toxic. But what happens when they heat the cottonseed to extract the oil from it? The heating process actually denatures and deactivates the gossypol. So it's safe to feed horses, it's not going to poison them. But the problem is the gossypol, to deactivate itself, its favourite thing to grab hold of is lysine. So there's not much lysine in cottonseed meal to start with, and then when they heat it, you have gossypol floating around and it grabs hold of the lysine. So it's not toxic anymore, but it's completely taken lysine out of the equation. And then the work done in Australia on cottonseed meal has found that 60% of the lysine that cottonseed contains is not available for absorption. And it's kind of lucky that the horse and the bacteria can't break the bond between the lysine and gossypol, because if they did, I mean, yes, lysine would be available, but your horse would probably be dead, so it doesn't matter because the gossypol would be toxic again. So it's good that it doesn't dissociate, but it's not good in that it's taken lysine out of the game for being absorbed. So the highest quality vegetable protein we use in horse diets is soybean, and the lowest quality vegetable protein is cottonseed meal. So I've got 2 kids. I've got a 7-year-old girl and a 3-year-old boy, and this is Bo's blocks. I borrowed them from him for a few days. But I've just found that showing people how protein works using building blocks is just a really good visual way of actually understanding what an essential amino acid, non-essential amino acid, and how proteins get absorbed and built. So if we imagine that this is soybean in a horse's diet, and the blue blocks are non-essential amino acids, and then we've got the yellow we'll say is lysine, which is the most limiting amino acid, so the one that a horse is most likely to run out of first. If we say the red's methionine and the green is threonine, okay? So this is what a horse eats, and it'll be much bigger than this, but I didn't want to steal too many blocks, so just imagine this is your soybean, okay? So the horse eats it, chews it up, goes down through the stomach, might get broken down a tiny little bit in the stomach, maybe into 2 pieces, goes into the small intestine, and the enzymes start chopping it up into single amino acids. So they're now floating around in the small intestine in single amino acid pieces, and then that all gets absorbed into the blood, okay? So it's all chopped up now by the enzymes, and it goes through into the horse's bloodstream. And then the horse has been working and its muscles are going, oh, I kind of need to build up a bit more muscle protein. And the muscles will start looking around for the amino acids it needs to build that specific muscle protein. And it'll need, say, a non-essential amino acid and then a methionine, and we'll do a couple of non-essentials, and we'll do a lysine. So this is literally what happens. It gets broken down and goes into the body, and then it gets rebuilt again. And it's not necessarily going to be in the same order, but it's using the same amino acids. You get good at building blocks when you've got kids. All right, so that's a muscle protein now inside the horse's body. And we had all of the essential amino acids we needed to build, luckily, that muscle protein, because we used nice high quality protein and it was soybean. Okay, now what happens, I need 4 volunteers to build blocks. So how about we go 1, 2, 3, 4. Come out here and build some blocks for me. Come on. All right, so you take that one. You've got cottonseed. I'll explain yours in a minute. Okay. All right. So just imagine these are all different proteins that we've just fed to your particular horses. What I want you to do, you might have to do it on the table or on the floor, wherever you can fit. Build this protein for me. And when you get to a colour that you don't have, you have to stop, okay? Because what happens when a horse is building protein is once it gets to the point where it doesn't actually have that amino acid, it has to stop building that protein because it can't just substitute something else in. It doesn't work like that. It has to have the right amino acid. So this one here is special because it's cottonseed. So this is lysine, the yellow bit. Remember the yellow amino acid? This is lysine, but the red thing is gossypol, okay? So the lysine is there, but it's attached to gossypol, so the horse can't even absorb it. So your horse has eaten this, but this is still in its gut because it can't get out of the gut, and that's now all you've got left to build that with. So I've got red. So you're completely snookered. You don't have any. You don't have any methionine, okay? So this horse here has run out of methionine, which is a perfectly reasonable thing to expect to happen because it's a very limiting amino acid. So if this horse is trying to build muscle protein, it'll go, well, I've got that non-essential amino acid. I don't have any methionine. So it has to stop. It can't build protein, and the likelihood is it's going to have to actually break down some protein in its body somewhere to supply methionine for more important purposes, okay? So you're out. You can't do anything.
Is that what you're meaning?
Sorry?
If it stops at that one,
yep.
It's not going to...
It's not going to use. So those amino acids that you've still got in the pile, they might go floating around and find some other purpose, or the horse is just going to burn them up as like a carbohydrate and use them for calories. So if you don't have the right amino acids, you just physically cannot build the protein, okay? So the one on the end there, you've got soybean. Yeah, it was just an extra. My lovely students today probably messed up all my bags of blocks building robots out of them after they finished with them. Okay, so that one there you've managed to get through and you've built the muscle protein. Here we've run out of lysine, so there was no more yellow block, so we've got part of the way. So that protein, it's partly built, but it's useless to the horse. So what the horse will actually do with that protein is probably just break it down and let the amino acids go circling around and do something else, or it'll chop them up and burn them for calories. And this one, you would only actually get to here. And that's all you can do because you don't have any lysine. So the building process stops. So it's really, really important for any animal, and the same thing applies in milk production in lactating mares. If you don't give the lactating mare the amino acids she needs, she can't make milk. But what you'll see lactating mares do, who's ever seen a lactating mare that the longer she lactates, the more her top line goes like this and her rump just disappears and she ends up with no muscle. So what she's doing is she's actually mining her own body reserves of amino acids to make milk for her foal. And her muscle is literally disappearing because she's pulling all of the amino acids out of her muscle to make milk for her foal. And you'll see, I know in beef cattle we always say that it's a really good cow that will do that. Like the cows that when they hit a bit of a tough time, like if the pasture quality drops off or whatever, and you'll see the cows like start to lose condition, but the calf just absolutely thriving. You know that she's using up her own body reserves of protein to actually feed her calf. And then you'll get cows that you go is not very good mother because it stays round and roly-poly and the calf looks really weedy, so she's not actually pulling her own body reserves out. But a horse can't do that. If you've got a performance horse and you're wanting it to, or a show horse and you want it to muscle up, they can't go pulling protein from anywhere else to build muscle because there is nowhere else to pull protein from. It has to come out of their feed. So protein quality in a horse feed is so important, and it's completely different to ruminant nutrition because the ruminants digest the bacteria and that's where they get a lot of their protein from. So a horse is completely reliant on the protein you're putting in its mouth in the feed that you're using. So if you've got least costed feeds and you've got cottonseed meal or you've got things that are really low in methionine, there's just muscle building cannot happen because the building blocks aren't there to actually build muscle with. So thank you very much. Thank you. All right. So here's a little a graph comparing cottonseed meal with full-fat soybean. So cottonseed meal and full-fat soybean are both around that 36, 37% crude protein. So if you look at them on a crude protein basis, they look exactly the same, which means that when they're in a least cost situation, cottonseed meal's around $300, $350 a tonne. Full-fat soybean that's been properly cooked is around $700 to $800 a tonne. So you know, take a wild stab in the dark at which one is going to be pulled in to a least costed feed. It's going to be cottonseed meal every time because it's just so much cheaper than the soybean. But this just shows you the difference in total lysine content. So the soybean in the yellow is much higher in total lysine content. But then when you consider you have to take 60% of the lysine in cottonseed meal completely out of the equation because it's attached to gossypol and the horse can't even access it, you end up with this situation where you're getting this much lysine from the cottonseed and this much from the soybean. So they're dramatically different. They're also quite different in threonine content. And then if anyone has ever heard of the branched chain amino acids, human athletes use them a lot, racehorse trainers use them in things like BCAA paste. So they're just essential amino acids as well, and the levels of them in cottonseed meal versus soybean meal are quite different too. And they're really quite important for muscle recovery and feeding muscles after the horse has actually worked. So with least cost rations containing cottonseed meal, total lysine is corrected by adding synthetic lysine. So, you know, the nutritionist might add that much more lysine on top of here to make them essentially look the same from a lysine perspective, but 60% of the naturally occurring lysine is not digestible. So, you know, they're topping it up to here, but they really should be topping it up to way up above to get the same amount of lysine. And then even if they do that, there's still a whole bunch of other essential amino acids that are going to fall behind. So you can make it look okay from a lysine perspective, but it's still not going to be okay from a lot of other amino acid perspectives, which again, when you look at how pig and poultry nutritionists formulate, they're formulating on 10 available amino acids. So they wouldn't take this into account. That wouldn't even factor into their equation because essentially to them, it's just not even there. Which it's not, it shouldn't be there. And they do that for 10 amino acids. We do it for 1 and we look at total. So it's least costing in horse nutrition is a disaster. Unless you've got a horse that's really not doing very much and then it doesn't really matter.